Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to Funnel Trade. Let's have another IRS Schedule C video. We love these. So I wanted to go through the stuff on part 2 expenses and talk about what all these individual things meant and which ones are probably applicable if you're turning your TCG hobby into a real business, which ones you're going to kind of need to keep an eye out on and track for your business purposes. So line 8, advertising. Maybe you buy Google AdSense words, you would put expenses for that there. Line 9 is one you'll probably get into, car and truck expenses. And I talked in a previous video about how you probably don't want to account for all your vehicle expenses explicitly in a business like this because a vehicle is such a minor part of this business. Basically, you only use it to go somewhere like a card store to buy cards or go to the post office to drop off things you've sold that you're mailing to the buyers. And so in those cases, you can tally up the mileage for those. And I had that on the spreadsheet here, and it was just, trips to the post office. But also a legitimate one would be card store. If you have to drive 3 miles to the card store, you can tally up that mileage here. And also if, let's say, you drove to Tulsa for the convention, the card convention, and you drove 300 miles to get there, you would tally it up here and that would go on your mileage. The current mileage rate is 56 cents per mile. So basically, the IRS says that every mile you drive a vehicle costs about 56 cents. And they're kind of looking at gas, maintenance, wear and tear on the car, insurance, all the stuff together. About 56 cents is what they say is reasonable. So you get to deduct 56 cents of expense from every mile that you drive. So keep track of those every time you have to go to the post office, you go to a card store, you go to, a big car show or a convention or something like that. Line 10, commission and fees. You probably really won't have much of this. Contract labor, no. Depletion, no. Depreciation, this is something that you probably won't have for a long time. You may have it eventually. Again, I've given some examples of that. Things like if you have a card store one day and you buy a card sorting robot, you might depreciate the cost of that robot. But more likely, that robot is going to be on some type of awful perpetual subscription plan, and you're just going to pay forever for it. Employee benefit programs, well, you probably don't have any employees. Even you are probably not considered an employee of your business because you probably don't pay yourself at this point. The dream, of course, is to one day be cash flow positive and be able to pay yourself. Insurance, probably not an issue for you. Now, if you have a giant warehouse of product and you somehow insure it, which I'd be surprised if you could, then that would go there. 16, interest, mortgage, and other, probably not. Some people can deduct some part of the expenses of using their house for their business, but I think that's actually somewhere else on this form. I can't recall. 17, legal and professional services. You likely won't have many of those. Line 18, office expenses. This is where it starts to actually get interesting. So basic office things that you use, pens, pencils, highlighters, tape, paper clips, printer toner, things like that. Those are all office expenses that you can deduct. Now, they need to be used in the business. Be honest about things. And if you normally, I don't know, if you homeschool your kids and you normally print 200 pieces of paper a month for homeschooling, you need to think about how to account for toner when you print 4 or 5 or 10 shipping labels a month for the business. Should the business really pay for all of that toner? Are you using most of it for the business? You need to think about how to be honest about those things. Line 18 for these office expenses also covers postage. It's kind of weird to have that lumped in here, but any postage that you use in the business. So shipping all your products, this is where you deduct the cost of it. Line 19, pension and profit sharing, probably not. 20, rent or lease. You probably won't have those at this point. One day, if you open a brick and mortar store, that's where you would account it. 21, repairs and maintenance. You're not likely to need to repair or maintain a lot of things used in the business. It's mostly your hands. 22, supplies. This is another one that you get into a lot. This will be things like shipping envelopes, tape, bubble wrap, shipping boxes, blank shipping labels, things like that that you need in order to uh, send your product along. This is distinctly different from office supplies because it's not things you're using in the office while running your business. This is things related to the actual sale of your product. So, and this is where you record all of those things where I told you not to record them in the other video on inventory accounting, where I said line 38 materials and supplies, we put 0. It's because we account for them here. Basically, if I buy a, let's say I buy a 100 pack of padded envelopes and it's $30, I will put that here and I will deduct the entire cost of those 100 envelopes in the tax year that I bought them, instead of trying to account for the incremental usage of every one of them by listing it here. I will just go ahead and deduct all of them, and even though some of them may survive to next year and I'll use them next year, I've already deducted them on the previous year's taxes. It just makes it so much easier because then you do not have to track your inventory of envelopes, of tape, of bubble wrap. You don't want to track those inventories. So you just put the entire cost of the supplies here, and you don't worry about when you're actually going to consume them for the business. The other interesting thing that goes on supplies is professional materials, books, to the extent that their useful life is not much past a year. And so that's kind of an interesting thing that's a little fuzzy. It's where I record things like I bought a Tim and Greg Hildebrandt art book, and I'm going to make a video about it. So the way I view that for the business is it does not have much of a useful life beyond a year, because I will make some YouTube videos out of that book, and then I won't really be able to use it for the business much anymore. So I will deplete the book in about one tax year, and so I count that as supplies. It's something that I use for the business. Other things that I put there, at least, I go ahead and put stuff like card sleeves, BCW boxes, those kind of things, because it is not worth trying to depreciate those because the value is so low. And again, what you depreciate and what you expense as supplies can kind of vary on how big your business is. And, the IRS is pretty okay with that as long as you have a good faith explanation of what you're doing and why you're trying to do it. Line 23, taxes and licenses. You probably won't have a lot of that. Travel and meals, line 24. This one's interesting. You can deduct the cost of a meal as long as it is a business meal with a potential customer or supplier or consultant. So if you and your wife are going out to dinner, you probably can't honestly deduct that. But if you have a potential customer for something and you go out to eat and you discuss the business and the sales and things like that, you can deduct it as a meal. I will tell you, honestly, I have not deducted a single meal since I started this business over a year ago, because I haven't felt like there's been one where I could really justify it honestly. Now, the interesting thing is, in response to pandemic, in response to restaurants getting hit so hard, for tax years 2021 and 22, 100% of business meals are deductible. Generally, only 50% has been deductible in the past, but for those two tax years, 100% is deductible because they're trying to get people to go back into restaurants more and support the hospitality industry and stuff like that. So they're letting them deduct 100% of the cost of the meal. This is one where I know other people who run businesses, several of them, and man, they abuse the heck out of this one, because really it's difficult for the IRS to ever prove anything. And, the reality, though, is if an IRS agent is asking you questions and they say you run a hobby business buying and selling magic cards, and you're like, yeah. And they're like, and you spent $5,000 taking customers out to eat for the year, it's going to be pretty difficult for you to defend that. But there may be times when you can actually justify it. And also travel expenses, this will allow you to deduct some or all of the expenses if you did something like, say, go to a big card show in another state, and so you had to travel there. Maybe you flew there and you stayed in a hotel overnight and you had meals while you were on that trip. This is where you would start to account for those things. 25, utilities, nope. 26 wages, probably not, and other expenses and reserve for future use. So um, again, these are supplemental things. There may or may not be instructions for how to use those lines, but really a lot of this stuff is pretty simple. And these kind of, uh, I keep calling them hobby businesses, even though that's kind of a bad word to use in the eyes of the IRS because they don't like hobby businesses. They want you to actually be engaged in good faith in the business of trying to make a profit if you're getting advantages like immunity from sales tax and being able to deduct these things. But for people like us in these small kind of businesses, it's really not that complicated to do the taxes like this. It shouldn't take you very long. And of course, if you're actually tracking everything like your mileage, your expenses, and your sales and stuff like that, if you're tracking all this stuff diligently over the course of the year, you're going to have all the records you need in order to fill out your Schedule C and not worry about doing it wrong or getting in trouble or anything. And the advice I always give, both in my professional career and when it comes to doing taxes and business accounting, it's that you should not do anything that you would not feel comfortable defending in an audit. And so at work, sometimes with my professional career, there are times when we make decisions that will down the road be life or death decisions for people. And so we always need to think, if something goes catastrophically wrong and someone gets injured or killed because of this decision, what would we feel comfortable defending ourselves about in front of a board of inquiry, or in the case of tax accounting for your business, the IRS? In an audit, what do you think you would honestly feel okay trying to defend? And again, maybe $5,000 or $10,000 deduction for meals is not something that you think you could honestly defend. So, if you like many things in life, if you're just honest about it, you act in good faith, you'll have a lot fewer problems. So let me know if you have any questions out of this. I've gotten really good feedback from this series so far, and I'll keep making them. I'm kind of shocked at how much people like these videos. So let me know what you think. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Join me on Final Trade. Thanks a lot, guys.